I would have and did hold the same position for 4 years when nothing was being done. And so there's one of two things. Both parties decided, or both presidencies decided to cover something else up, or maybe they don't yet have the evidence that we think we need in order to charge. Both of those things can also be true. And I do think that that is a reasonable point.
I think you're right, but I think there's no explaining the lack of initiative to even engage in investigation, which is what we are also seeing now.
Right, and you're trying to make them parallel. There are three major differences here. Number one, the sitting president today, unlike Biden, is mentioned over 1,000 times in the emails that we have seen so far.
What were some of the
One second.
You're
going to let me finish my three.
In today's video, Abby Phillip and Charles Blow corners Jason Rantz on CNN's NewsNight with Abby Phillip as a heated debate erupts over Ghislaine Maxwell, the Epstein files, and the possibility of political clemency. When Jason Rantz tries to shift the focus, Abby Phillip and Charles Blow corner him with tough questions about transparency, accountability, and justice for victims. So let's dive in and watch how Abby Phillip and Charles Blow corners Jason Rantz on CNN's NewsNight with Abby Phillip.
All you have to do is all you have to do is release the files as compelled by an act of Congress.
Correct.
All but one representative in the House voted to release it. It was unanimously passed in the Senate, and the president signed it. This is law. This is not an argument. And the DOJ and the president and the administration is violating the law that the president signed. I don't want to hear from Maxwell. I want all the files to be released.
And
let's start there. Let's start there.
It's also not the first criminal, though, that this administration has tried to help. Like, I think that we are all missing the point of this in every circumstance, that this administration will do anything that they can to help somebody who is going to help them. And that's exactly what she's trying to promise right now to them on this stage. And he is willing to go through with that, just as he had with every other member of his cabinet and every other member of this administration.
He doesn't actually need help from Maxwell.
Well, then release the files.
Why is he acting like he needs
Wait,
help?
do you think it looks good that
like
I'm not saying
like
that there's evidence of wrongdoing, but 6 million pages just came out. A lot of it redacted that Congress believes should not have been redacted, and they're going through it. They went through it today.
Some members of Congress believe that, correct?
Well, what's the difference? If you're reading a report,
the difference is that the people have come out and spoken out in favor of.
You're making
of course, it's political. When you've got Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie out there who have been very critical of the president, one is running for president and he thinks this is going to help his career. The other one is being primary because of Donald Trump. So these are two people
what you just named was a Republican and a Democrat that are bipartisan in that capacity, which is something that you don't often see in this day and age, right?
It's not legitimate what you're saying. This is not because this was a.
It's not political at all. None of
this is political. Can I speak or do you want to just keep repeating?
Let's submit that it's political.
This is a criminal investigation from 2 different indictments in 2 different places on one person who is now dead. This didn't become political until the DOJ decided that the Trump administration ran on a campaign that we're releasing the Epstein files as soon as we get into office. And as soon as they were asked to release the Epstein files, they gave empty binders out in the White House in February of 2025 with nothing in them. And then from then, they hid it. And then we had to go to Congress and get a law put on the books to get the files released. Now, wait, I'm not done. You had your point. Then they released the file. And they don't tell us in advance that it's 6 million pages worth of documents. They told us the year before that they already looked through the file. The DOJ issued a memo and said, we looked through the file, July of 2025. There's nothing to see here. Everybody go home. President Trump said the same thing. Everybody move on. There's nothing to move on from. This is huge. And Maxwell is just sort of a prop put up there, and they gave her an extra chance to ask for a pardon again. And the fact that the president, and I'm almost done with my point, and then you're on your own, the fact that the president did not say there's no way that this convicted sex trafficker is ever getting a pardon from me, that's the problem that we're all sitting with right now.
What stood out is how much this debate really isn't about Ghislaine Maxwell at all. It's about transparency and trust. Charles Blow and Stacey Schneider are right to push for the release of the actual investigative files because that's where the real answers are. The Department of Justice has decades of material tied to the 2006 Florida case and the 2019 federal prosecution. That evidence was gathered under oath through subpoenas and grand juries, not through a convicted trafficker bargaining for leverage. There's also a basic legal principle here. Accountability flows from institutions, not from deals with defendants hoping for clemency. When Congress passes legislation compelling disclosure and it's signed into law, compliance isn't optional. Partial releases with heavy redactions only fuel suspicion. Historically, major federal scandals from Watergate to the Church Committee were clarified through document production, not press conferences or conditional testimony from compromised witnesses. Jason Rantz frames this as political theater, but the political element intensified precisely because promises were made about full transparency. If an administration campaigns on releasing files and then delays or limits access, it invites scrutiny. That's not partisan, it's predictable. Public confidence in the justice system drops when information appears selectively managed, especially in cases involving powerful figures. Most importantly, survivors have consistently asked for full disclosure. Victim advocacy groups argue transparency deters future abuse and exposes systemic failures. The focus should be on institutional accountability and systemic reform, not elevating Maxwell as some key to hidden truths. The files exist, release them in full with necessary victim protections, and let the facts speak without political filters.
But I don't think
giving her
people
the
are sitting with that as a problem. This idea that this wasn't political from the beginning after 4 years of the Biden administration
To go to
did
the Biden
literally nothing.
administration.
Yes, because you're pretending that it wasn't political.
prosecution was
So
during
why
the Trump
pretend that, why pretend
1.0.
that there is general agreement
that's a political
across the
talking
board
point.
about several talking points, right?
What are
She's
the
evil,
agreement
she
on?
deserves to be in jail.
Okay,
Period. I don't
okay.
think she has that much
She is
to
in
offer.
jail.
However, this idea that you're playing
Push you in
here
jail
that-
because of your president,
But
but-
the idea that you're playing here that there's no politics at play is just absolutely
Okay,
absurd.
but it's a
Jason, let me ask you this, because I mean, the vote in the Congress was bipartisan.
Yes.
Yes.
And it was nearly unanimous.
Yes.
So, I mean, if there's politics being played, it's now by both sides.
Oh no, I think politics are
So
being played on both
I
sides.
mean,
to be clear,
but I don't
this idea
understand.
that
That
one
doesn't-
side is playing politics is just it's flatly false.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think that's actually the accusation. I think the accusation isn't that the Trump administration is playing politics. The accusation is that they're trying to protect people, whether it's Trump or other people. That's the accusation.
Well, so I actually
So that's
agree
not political,
to a
because
degree
a lot of
on
these
that.
other men, they don't
Yeah,
have ties
sure.
to politics. They have ties to all kinds of different things.
I
So
don't disagree
that's not
with you on that
political.
point. I think that there is truth to that. However, I also think in that truth is that there are people who are named in the documents who aren't actually guilty of anything. And I think some of the reluctance to just put out all of the documents, number one, is because we don't want to just smear someone who is mentioned in the documents. And I think that that's fair for anyone to point
So
out.
look,
And
let me just make a quick. Let
You think
me
everyone's
let me just make a quick
Well,
note
the
here.
American
Hold
public
on.
side.
But you
not
keep
the
saying,
point.
however, after every statement that you make, as if you're conceding a point when you're not. That, however, is operating as a negation. I'm sure you know this already. But when people say that, it basically the however.
So you think everyone
no,
who's
the however
mentioned
invalidates
is
everything
guilty?
you said before that.
It's not,
That's the
it may
problem.
not-
That is not a
hold on,
concession.
It may not
It
be
is an obliteration
everyone.
of
It
the
may
fact.
not be everyone, Jason. But look, there's a reason that people think that there is a lot of smoke here that needs to be investigated. Bunch of emails with the senders' names redacted. Now, let me just make a note. The DOJ says their emails have been redacted for privacy reasons. But here's some of the emails. Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty. Another email. The key are the 14 to 15-year-olds. I am a sexual pervert because I say they are now of reproductive age. Being called a sexual pervert is no fun. Another email. I met redacted today. She's like Lolita from Nabokov, femme miniature. Another email. I just saw the most beautiful little girl on Madison with soft blonde hair. Again, a lot of smoke. And then the DOJ, all they keep saying is there's nothing to see here. Nobody should be charged except for Epstein and Maxwell. That's what Todd Blanche has said. And people think that's suspicious. Don't you think that
no,
that's a
I do think
reasonable
that
thing
that
to
is
think?
suspicious, and I do think that is reasonable to ask for all of the data. But it doesn't mean you do it in an irresponsible way. There have been some of the emails that clearly
but I
point
guess
to
the
perverted
issue-
behavior that
I-
should be
it's
outed.
not- I get the point about doing it responsibly. They're not doing it at all. They've told us they are not doing it at all. Todd Blanche has repeatedly said that there's no reason to believe that anyone else should be charged. I don't think it's unreasonable for people to hear that and
What makes this clash so intense is that it's really about credibility. Abby Phillip's broader point lands because public trust in institutions is already fragile. When the Department of Justice insists there's nothing to see while simultaneously acknowledging millions of pages of documents that disconnect raises eyebrows. Historically, major federal investigations from Iran-Contra to the Catholic Church abuse reports only restored confidence after extensive document disclosures, not blanket reassurances. There's also the transparency issue. When Congress votes in a bipartisan, near-unanimous way to compel disclosure, that signals this isn't some fringe obsession. Lawmakers from both parties rarely agree on anything this sensitive unless there's genuine concern. And when large portions of emails are redacted, especially ones containing disturbing language, it's natural for the public to question whether privacy protections are being applied consistently or strategically. Jason Rantz is right that releasing names irresponsibly could smear innocent people, but there are established legal tools for that: protective orders, structured disclosures, independent reviews. Courts manage sensitive information all the time without shutting down transparency altogether. The idea that the only options are total secrecy or reckless exposure just isn't accurate. Most importantly, the optics matter. When officials categorically rule out further charges before the public sees the full record, it feels preemptive. Even if the conclusion is legally sound, the process has to look thorough and independent. Suspicion grows in the gaps between promise and action. That's why calls for fuller disclosure aren't inherently partisan. They're rooted in restoring public confidence in how justice is handled.
Say, huh?
Oh, I
How's that
agree.
possible?
And I would have and did hold the same position for 4 years when nothing was being done. And so there's one of two things. Both parties decided, or both presidencies decided to cover something else up, or maybe they don't yet have the evidence that we think we need in order to charge. Both of those things can also be true. And I do think that that is a reasonable point to be made.
I think you're right, but I think there's no explaining the lack of initiative to even engage in investigation, which is what we are also seeing now.
Right, which,
And you're
which
trying to
the
make them
survivors
parallel.
are
There are three major differences here. Number one, the sitting president today, unlike Biden, is mentioned over 1,000 times in the emails that we have seen so far.
What were some of the
One second.
What were
One
some of
second.
the
No, you got to let me finish my
You're
three.
dropping that bomb without giving the context.
Context. Are you going to mention the context?
Explain it.
Oh, you got to let me finish.
Are you going to let her cry?
Thank you. That's great. The second one is that Congress has passed legislation to compel this, which did not exist during Biden. And the third one, which is the most important one, is that now the survivors have banded together to ask themselves that the full documents be released. Those three conditions did not exist under Joe Biden. They exist now. What Biden isn't proud of it is a real problem. Is a real problem.
It's a valid question.
I have not met a single person who can go back and change a single minute that happened before. But we can all today just make an affirmative statement that, yes, all of this should be exposed, and anyone who knew about it and participated in it should be exposed and brought to justice. They are. The DOJ is arguing against that.
Yeah, but no one's really arguing against it. But your 3 points, 10 seconds. Number one, when we're saying how many times he's mentioned, they include article links and URLs that have his name in it, and we should point that out. Number two, the real reasons why it didn't happen under 4 years, no one's going to answer that question. You're saying that now we have the people to do. Okay, well then explain why for 4 years we didn't. And then the third point,
Democrats
were
asking
let me
to
finish
investigate
my
even
last
before
point.
the Biden administration.
You do, in fact, have victims who are calling for it, but there are also victims who don't want their names out there. And there has been criticism of the DOJ rushing to get out some of these documents because they didn't do full redactions of every single person.
No, nobody is asking about their names being out there. What they're saying is that they specifically don't want their names out. That is part of the travesty of this, is that the DOJ has published their names and some of their photos and some of their addresses. That is part of the tragedy
We got to
of
leave it
this.
there, guys. Next for us.
What stands out is how incomplete transparency keeps fueling distrust. When a sitting president's name appears repeatedly in investigative materials, even if some mentions are links or secondary references, that alone creates a higher standard for disclosure. Public officials tied in any way to a case like this historically face deeper scrutiny, not lighter. That's not partisan. That's basic accountability in a democracy. There's also the legal backdrop. When Congress passes legislation compelling document release, that changes the stakes entirely. Ignoring or slow-walking compliance with a bipartisan mandate isn't just politics. It brushes up against separation of powers concerns. We've seen in past oversight battles that when the executive branch resists lawful disclosure, courts often side with transparency, especially when public interest is overwhelming. Jason Rantz raises a fair concern about protecting victims, but that's not incompatible with broader release. Federal courts routinely unseal documents with victim names redacted while still exposing the substance of wrongdoing. The idea that safeguarding survivors requires shielding all surrounding evidence doesn't hold up. In fact, many survivor advocacy groups consistently argue that systemic exposure, not secrecy, prevents future abuse. Most importantly, credibility erodes when officials preemptively declare no further charges are warranted before the public sees the full scope of evidence. Even if that conclusion is ultimately correct, announcing it too early looks defensive. History shows that sunlight, handled carefully but firmly, restores trust far more effectively than reassurances delivered behind closed doors. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.